Hello and welcome to the Crow's Nest. My name is Brandon Kane, coming at you here, off-season style here for our Mariners, as we are sitting on the precipice of free agency, but we do find Mr. Dipoto ever active and ever on the lookout for how he might be able to help this team out, maybe get us over the top, because of course it's been a little while since I've had a chance to talk to you, so let's catch up for a moment. We got we were looking at the Astros right before everything sort of signed off and dialed in as far as the year goes. I went off and saw the final game of the year in person there in the stadium, and it was a great experience out there going to check it out and to get that feel for playoff baseball. And you've certainly got to give the fans a lot of credit in the stadium out there at the end of that last game, as they really did give it their all. For 18 long innings, we stood, we cheered, we called every one of the Astros cheaters every time they came up to the plate. We did everything we possibly could do to spur our team on, and it just wasn't enough. They just couldn't generate any runs. Now you do find out in retrospect, of course, the Astros go and win the World Series, so you couldn't beat the team that was going to be the eventual champion that season, and so you maybe feel a little less bad about that. This was certainly, I think, in a lot of respects, much like our Seahawks, a feeling of this is a bonus year. Nobody expected you to get here. We won't just get us into the playoffs. Say nothing of actually having some playoff success. And one can only wonder what would have happened if they had been able to get past the Astros somehow, some way, though it wasn't a close series. And even in the last game, you couldn't score one run in 18 games. We did, of course, learn that there was an injury. We had Cal Raleigh was fighting through at the end there. You know that Julio had some back spasm stuff that was between innings, having him have something on his back. So there was definitely a good amount of guys that were ailing down the stretch there a little bit. And you definitely didn't have your team, as I'd kind of been hoping throughout the course of the year, playing at its best at that time of year. Instead, it was a little bit different of that. The starting pitching held up relatively okay, absent Robbie Ray against absent him, I guess. But the fielding was all right. The bullpen was kind of getting shaky a little bit at times in the playoffs. First word had been in the regular season. But we walk away from this year feeling good, encouraged nonetheless with what we got as far as a final result goals, and knowing that we are fairly assuredly on the path towards future success, and hopefully really being able to get up there and compete with this Houston Astro team. It's not an easy team, though. It's obviously a team that's not going anywhere anytime soon. We can't just hope for them to all just get old and move on. Verlander is going to, it sounds like, opt out of his deal, and he is at some point or another going to meet Father Time, as Father Time is, of course, undefeated. But for the moment, they've also got some other young guys around there that are playing well for them, and they're going to be able to add pieces and parts too as well. It doesn't mean that just what they're standing in is where they're done. So Seattle is going to be forced, if they're going to want to truly, not just talking about trying to compete to get to World Series title shots now, but within your own division, you may have the best team in baseball running. And so you've got to plan and build your team in a way to try to beat them, or what are we doing here? This is what I would ask on that. And indeed, I think that Dipoto is planning on making a couple of different moves here. I don't think he's planning on just standing pat. So let's talk about a couple of the first few moves here that have been made out the gate, and drive into them here just a little bit. So we knew that the outfield situation was going to need to be dealt with. And when you looked at the outfield, as far as how it was going and where it was. Let's not do that. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just trying to bring up this thing here so you guys can see it. We looked at the outfield free agents that you had as far as options go and whatnot. You weren't going to see a lot out there in free agency that was going to make a ton of sense. And it did look like this was going to need to be a trade in order to pull this out. Oh, man. There we go. Trying to get my deal to work here so you guys can see. So we were going to need to look at what the options were, and specifically right field, left field. If we were not going to bring back Mitch Haniger, who didn't have the greatest of years once he came back last year, I had a lot higher hopes that he would do better than he did. He wasn't, putrid, but he wasn't very good either on the other side of it. But he's one of the main free agents that's out there available once you get past an Aaron Judge, who as we all acknowledge, Seattle had no chance of going out and getting an Aaron Judge. That was not going to happen. Will Myers, a little older. Tyler Naquin, a little bit older. Not any names there that really stand out to you from the right field side of things. Certainly left field is also an option here. If I scroll up just a little bit, and show you guys what we got. You have Joey Gallo at 29 years old. You could maybe look at that as a possible option. Andrew Benintendi doesn't do a lot for me, but 4.5 WAR for his career on that. But then there's kind of a lot of other guys in there, kind of a muddled mix a little bit. So Dipoto looks at this situation and knows he needs to upgrade it. Some people have been throwing around the name of Brandon Nimmo as a guy that you bring in and then move him to either a left or right field, theoretically speaking. But there just isn't a lot of good options here. And there are going to be other teams competing for these not great options out there in free agency. It's a little bit of a microcosm of what happened at the start of the year for the Mariners prior to the year, where now everybody's open in free agency because we're through the lockout period essentially here and everything's free and clear. But there's not a lot of big deals to be sent and moved around because there's not a lot of really great players out there to go and get. And, you know, you did have money to spend, but you don't just want to spend money for the sake of spending money. And when you do look at this list, to me, it just said, okay, the better option here is to try to make this via a trade. And so the Mariners did make this deal via a trade, and they went out and got Teoscar. I'm still working on my pronunciation. Hernandez from the Toronto Blue Jays. And I know many of you guys were in here as I was running live streams during the baseball end of the year with baseball and watching the Blue Jays. And I think both times all games watching them, I remarked at how impressed I was with Hernandez, how nice it would be if we could bring him in out of free agency. I would have, if I had more time, would have went and looked up the clip because I was really seeing the guys praise effusively when we were playing the Blue Jays and really going, boy, we could really use a guy like that in the outfield. So, and everybody at the time goes, well, he's not a free agent, so we're not going to have much chance to get him. But they went out and found a way to get him. So I am very much, let's just call this out the gate, very much in favor of this move. I like this move. I think it was a smart move. It's a bit of a go for now kind of move because obviously you're giving up prospects in this. You're giving up the 3 years of club control that you get with, let me get this screen a little bigger for you guys so you can see it maybe a little more clear. You're giving up the 3 years of club control with Eric Swanson, which definitely hurts just a little bit. But it's also not, I think, a death knell in that respect. He's a reliever. Relievers do have a tendency to have a lot of fluctuation year to year. And it's no certainty that he was going to continue to be a dominating pitcher from the bullpen as he had been this year. You're sort of selling him high, and you're getting a guy in Teoscar who is a professional hitter. Watched a good amount of tape on this guy since we've signed him, and obviously the view I've had of him before. He has a good plan up at the plate. You're not going to be able to just throw him breaking balls or change-ups or get him off. He's rarely fooled. He has a good understanding of sort of what pitchers are trying to do against him. He's not a dead pull hitter. He's a guy that can go to all fields. He's going to make you play him straight up from a fielding standpoint in that way. Very impressed with what he does with the bat. He is very much the essence of a professional hitter who you're bringing in here and you know what you're going to get with him. When you look at it statistically with Teoscar, he was a little bit of a late bloomer, a little bit, just to a tiny degree here, as he was, 230, 261, 239, 230. He was definitely never able to kind of push up through. There was one last final time he was sent to AAA before the light bulb kind of came on for him in 2020. And over the last 3 seasons, he's put up some good years. He's a guy that does strike out a good amount, though that has improved over the last few seasons. And he is not a guy that is necessarily going to walk a tremendous amount. So you're not getting a good necessarily on-base percentage guy. He's not necessarily with this control the zone kind of player that the Mariners have gravitated towards from hitters recently. But he knows what he's doing with the baseball bat in his hands. And he does also hit for good power. I think last year he set a career high in doubles, if I'm not mistaken. He's still hitting for a lot of home runs. He's only 30 years old, so he's not tremendously old. You had him at a 2.4 WAR last year, but just to give you a little bit of a comparison's sake, last year Mitch Haniger playing 57 games for the Mariners was at 0.8. So if you took Mitch Haniger and just extrapolated the numbers with him last year over essentially a 160 game schedule, you're going to get somewhere around a 2 WAR in total. So you're getting a little bit better here with Teoscar. He might be a little bit of a backtrack by just a half a step as far as defensively from where Mitch Haniger is. but then you're getting a little bit more maybe from him with the bat. He also plays with a lot of fire. You can see on any of highlights that he's not just a guy who goes with, I'm out here just doing my job. He's got that same kind of spirit and energy that we've seen from the clubhouse this year, which I think is going to be a very welcome sight for the team when he comes in, and he's going to fit right in, I think, in that respect of things. He's not stealing a lot of bases for you, only 6 steals last year, but this is a guy that helps to beef up this lineup. And I'll tell you something. When you sit in a stadium for 18 innings and you're breathing in smoke inhalation from the forest fires surrounding the area, and all you need is 1 run, I'm telling you now, we need this lineup beefed up. And I don't think that this is where they're going to end with this, but it's a good beginning place. You're doing it before free agency, so you don't have to go get all your work done in free agency. And quite frankly, as we'll get back to that free agent chart, there may be some other free agents at other positions that are more attractive to you because the outfield is so bare right now as far as that is concerned. But this kid's a good player. Yes, you only have the 1 year of club control, which is going to make it a little bit sticky, of course, as far as you gave up the 3 years of club control with Eric Swanson. We also gave up Adam Macko, pitching prospect in our organization. I believe the number 8th prospect in the organization. Based on what I'm reading with Macau is that he is going to be a reliever himself. So when you talk about moving relievers for getting a professional hitter, I'm kind of a guy that's going to sign up for that at this point, especially understanding right now we have good pitching. We have good depth at pitching. You can always usually go get relievers if that's something that does become a need somehow or another, which I don't think it's going to. I think Matt Brash's stepping up there in the pen has definitely helped this out as far as freeing you up in this respect of things. Swanson is a righty, so he's not a lefty or anything like that. It's not prime even bullpen assets. It's not a stopper, a closer. He's a really good pitcher, had a good dominant year last year, but that's not going to preclude me from getting this lineup in better shape than it's been. We can't have as many, as I've called it before, black holes in the lineup. That's just not going to work. It's just not going to get it done. So good move by the Mariners into Poto here to start things off and adding out to the right field. Now you can kind of see where they can zero in on left field. Do we go shortstop? Do we go second base? These are really the places that they're probably going to concentrate in on now as we go into free agency and the rest of this offseason. But you're going to probably need, I would say, to add at least one more. Man, would one more equivalent bat get this done in this lineup against Houston? Maybe. If the young guys continue to ascend, potentially. But that's a great Houston team. And just merely thinking you can do 1 or 2 moves and that's going to be enough, I don't think that that's going to be enough. I think they're going to have to push this as hard as they can kind of go, and that's why that's going to require the willingness to do a little bit of rental. That's the point now, is that you're not on a place of ascent anymore. You're into being an elite team in this sport. Once you're in the elite status, now you need to be in go-for-it mode, and this is a go-for-it kind of trade. The other deal that the Mariners made recently here was the move of Kyle Lewis for Cooper Hummel. I believe he's somewhat of a local kid from around the area. This had some Mariner fans unsure of what they're doing and what's going on here and why they did this. And Kyle Lewis was the rookie of the year. I mean, you're giving him up for a catching kind of he can be moved around, I guess, a little bit, King Cooper. So he's a little bit of a utility guy as well. He does get on base. So a little bit of the opposite at Teoscar is that he has a nose for getting on the base. This is a little bit of a head scratcher because you do have Murphy coming back to help out at the catching position next year to back up Raleigh, but this does give you some insurance. And as we've seen with the catcher position in the past, having some insurance there is not the worst of things. And as I said, he can kind of play some other positions as well. Not a terribly old player at 27 years old. You're getting something here for what would be theoretically nothing. The Diamondbacks are going to, they're buying very low here on Kyle Lewis and hoping that there can be something that can come back to what he was with Rookie of the Year. But let's also remember with the Rookie of the Year season, it occurred during the COVID season. So it occurred during a year where there were a lot less games played. And he had a very kind of sample size 30 game set within that where he was really tearing the cover off the ball. And then you had the surgeries and the knee surgeries. And to my eyes, it'll be interesting to what you guys say in the chat and your thought process on it. But to my eyes, he just didn't appear to have his legs under him. It looked like there was almost like damage done I'm just not going to recover from, or maybe it's going to take him just a couple of years to recover from. But when you don't have your legs as a hitter, you could see this year at the plate, he wasn't able to drive the ball or get even around on the fastball at times. At AAA, even at the end of the year, he wasn't hitting particularly well. He very well may eventually find his way back through on this, but I think the Mariners are probably smart to move off from him. They've already got kind of a prospect who's in a similar kind of state with Kelenic. We'll see if he remains on the roster as well. I think you can kind of afford only kind of one of these kind of guys that's in this sort of, well, is it going to come on? The light going to come back on or not? Is he going to get to that next step in his development or not? And you can't do multiple of them. There was also word that maybe Kyle was a little bit upset with and tired of the, being sent down and whatnot. And so maybe it was also a little bit of giving the player a chance to go somewhere and let him prove somewhere else and ain't working here. It does suck after the really good year he has had, but that's with knees is the way it can go sometimes when it starts to go really sideways on it. We'll see if he recovers on it, but I think that in very much a likelihood, the Mariners were probably going to end up doing some kind of trade like this with Kyle at some point this offseason. They're not in that place they were last year going into the year where, again, they can afford to have all these little positions where we've got young guys developing. We're just kind of waiting to see what they do, and then we'll make our determination, and then we'll make our next step. That's not the place we're in as a team anymore. It's a different mindset, and you can't afford to be waiting on guys who don't have a lot of, bright hope they're giving you as far as to be optimistic that the situation is going to turn around with them, as many are thinking or we're hoping that it would with Kyle Lewis. So in both of these trades, I'm in favor of them. I don't think Cooper's going to do a whole hell of a lot to move the needle, but I also don't. I also like the move again for getting something for kind of nothing, because I don't think there's a whole lot of value for Lewis at this point. The free agent positions that would look maybe potentially interesting here. As we can kind of go through them, does look a little bit more closer along to second base, shortstop. One of those two, you move Crawford to second, or you just go get a second baseman out there. Gene Segura, we're all very well aware of him, 33 years old. I don't think that's going to be a target. Adam Frazier, certainly it's possible you could bring him back. There's not a lot of great guys here in free agency at second base beyond that. Nothing. I don't think any of you guys are going to get excited by that. At shortstop, we do have a couple of names that have been brought up. Actually, three names that I hear very often brought up is Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, which I think is the dream for most Mariner fans. You bring in Carlos Correa, and then you have Teoscar Hernandez, and you've now that's a pretty solidified lineup. Certainly with left field, you would love to see Kelenic or Haggerty out there be able to settle in at that point. But I would feel pretty good about that team going into next year if you're able to bring on Correa, though he is going to cost all the money. Dansby Swanson might give you a good backup plan if you can't get Correa, but get you a guy in productivity who can get somewhat close to him in general terms. So he's a guy that I think you could take a look at as well. Xander Bogaerts, again, maybe there. I don't know, that name I haven't been hearing is connected as much with the Mariners. So to me, there is some shortstops here you could be seeing brought in that would maybe, change this around a little bit. Like nobody out there really left field wise in free agency, so they could go back into the well again and try to make another trade in that respect of things. Also, I am hearing Colton Wong, I'll bring up here for you guys now as an option to be brought in at second base. This one does just about nothing for me at this point. I can't argue with the fact that he was okay, I guess, last year with them. 3.1 WAR. You put his 3.1 WAR at shortstop, you move Crawford over to second, and you're thinking, okay, now we've gotten a little bit, again, it's a little bit of a moderate upgrade, much like Teoscar. You're getting a moderate upgrade at that point, but it's the sum total of all the moderate upgrades, I guess, if you make that kind of move. But 251 batting average, does get on base relatively well at 339. Not really going to provide you a ton of power, but 15 home runs, I guess, is something from the second base position. I guess that is a plus, we would say. 24 doubles last year. Still performing relatively well, despite the fact he has been in the game for a pretty good amount of time now. 10-year career, and he's sitting at 32 years old. So I'm a little bit hesitant on Wong myself. I'd love to see your guys' thoughts on this in the chat. But to me, I don't want to go for the 33-year-old guy who's just about to fall off that cliff, because we are now outside the steroid era. We are outside now that place where, where guys are playing at 34, 35, 36 years old, and they're still in their prime and they're still cooking through. It's not happening as much. So I'm a little less hesitant to believe those guys are going to continue on at their level of performance and stay at that level of performance on into the future, rather than I'll do it on a 29, 30-year-old guy, but at 33, 34-year-old, and then to be giving him a big deal, 3 or 4 year deal, which is what they're going to want. I just can't. I can't do that. All right, well, let's bounce over, guys, to the chat here. I just wanted to get some initial thoughts with you guys on this and taking a look at this signing and whatnot. I've got a little article at one point here I can read too on Teoscar that's kind of an interesting little bit, and doing some research on him, so we can get into that as well. I hope you're having a good night. Please do me a favor, good afternoon here, I should say, on Friday. Do me a favor and please do hit that like button if you could for me. It does help me out a tremendous amount. And get subbed up if you're not subbed up. Seahawks 12 man, what's up? Y2K, hello. Just saying, if you commit to a regular videos, now is the time to catch the wave of Mariner fans watching new Mariner YouTubers. There's not many good ones. For sure, man. For me, Y2K, I've got to put a lot of the time into the football side of it, because that's what's rolling right now. You know what I mean? I'm having as much growth on that side of the channel. So I've got to, with football, you've got to strike while the iron's hot, because once you get to the off season, there's just not as much interest. And so I've got to stay on it as much as I can, but I'm going to try to do as much as I can to keep it balanced with this, because I want this channel to keep going too. So it's a long-term thing though. And I got to go slow but steady, man, because it's easy to get wiped out, man, when you put so much into this with having the full-time job and all that. Larry the Cable Man, what other positions do we need to add depth in your opinion? I think, you've got to figure out what you got to do at the infield. I mean, Larry, that's where it sort of begins for me. I think you could make do with left field out at the gate if you needed to with Kelenic and Haggerty, though that's not necessarily ideal. To me, almost the ideal at this point is if you could find some way to get someone with some value on Kelenic, that'd be great. You probably can't, but you might start getting close to the point with a guy like Kelenic too, of saying, okay, we don't know if this light's going on here on this, and this just may be another one of those it is what it is kind of situations, and we need to go get some more certainty at this point. Maybe not. I'll trust the assessment of the team where they are with them, and if they give more patience to them, I think they've earned the right to say we think Kelenic will get this around. Still only 24 years old. Some guys take a little longer to develop. It's gonna turn on for him. And you do have Haggerty as a backup option. Then at that point, that's not the worst. So you don't hate that. With Kyle Lewis gone now, though, depending on what you do with Kelenic, because you're going to probably put him AAA if he's not starting here on the normal mode out the gate. So you probably do need to get a little bit of outfield depth on top of this at that point. I think that would be you still got Winker. They got to get rid of some of this dead weight, man, Larry. They got to get rid of some of the dead weight. Winker's not a fit for this team. He's not a fit for that ballpark. So they've got it, but I guess he's your backup theoretical left field and maybe right fielder too at the moment. I don't like that though. That needs to be improved. So though I would still say outfield would be a spot. Certainly Swanson's arm's lost out of the pen. You probably need to maybe look at seeing where you're going to get that other arm from. It might come from within, but you could maybe stand to go out there and look around for another arm to add in there. I'd love to see a lefty out of the pen, a lefty that they could add, a specialist lefty. That was missing at times last year, especially for when Yordan Alvarez comes up to the plate. Would be nice to have a guy there that could maybe make it a little bit tougher on him, if that's possible to go find. May not be possible to find, but that'd be something that I'd like to see addressed. Other than that, I think you're going to be pretty good. I like the rotation. I like most of the rest of where the bullpen's at. Julio's got center solidified. Hernandez got right field solidified. It's just really about finding, and even if you find your left fielder, technically, Larry, if you go get a left fielder at that point, then Haggerty becomes your depth. Then it's all just about who's the guy in the infield that you're going to be, given maybe a utility infielder, I guess. So it's kind of a small amount of things that are really needed. Cool Breeze is awesome looking trade off the top. I like the bat and the clubhouse personality big time. Indeed, the Blue Jays seem to really, really appreciate that guy. The fans were talking about missing him when he left. Go watch his highlights. And some guys hit home runs and what he does out in the outfield and the energy he shows on the base pads, he'll go take the extra base. He's not necessarily the fastest guy, but he uses a lot of hustle to his game. And he will stretch, and he'll stretch a long single out into a double if he can get away with it. If he catches the fielder kind of lollygagging a little bit, he'll go, okay, you do that. I'll go try to take this. And there's some close times where he'll get thrown out trying to take that little extra base on it. But I love his aggressiveness, and he's got that fire out there. You can see he's got that. I'm into what's happening out here. Baseball's that 162 game where you get in that malaise, and you get in the doldrums of the everyday playing. And you sometimes, I think, can kind of get almost hypnotically checked out a little bit. But everything that I've seen on his highlights and whatnot is he's bringing the fire. Plus, guys, he's got some of the sweetest bat flips you've ever seen. I mean, it's almost a little bit like poetry out there with the bat flips. It's pretty epic. You guys will like it. Trust me on that. Y2K, remember he smashed us in the playoffs? I do, Y2K. I was going to try to go find a clip of when we were playing them and play when I was talking about him, because I just remember just going, man, if we could bring this guy to the team, he would help out so much, this lineup. That's the kind of guy that can help solidify the middle of the order, which is a lot of what we need to do right now is, yeah, we need to lengthen out the order, but we also need to solidify the middle of it too. D-Man, how you doing, man? Larry the Cave Guy, should we replace JP? I think it's more of what you're looking to do here, Larry, is you target shortstop or second base, finding a capable guy both from a fielding standpoint and as a hitter. And then it's a matter of availability. If you have a second baseman that's available, great, JP can stay. If it's a matter of you got it, you can get Correa or you can get that kind of guy, then you move JP over to second base. I think that there's you allow yourself some flexibility here. I know JP, fell off as the year went on, started out hot as hell, 310, then it ended up like around 250 mark. And that's definitely going to disappoint some folks, but I thought he could be good enough. If you got him in the bottom of the lineup, even at 250 with what he brings from the glove standpoint, and his speed on the base paths, I think he would still be fine on this team. He's not an issue, and certainly there'd be some issues of trying to move off from him with just giving him that 5-year deal as they just did last year at the beginning of the year. Cool Breeze, what's up, man? James Caldwell, you're to beat the Astros? It might be, James. It's a good Astros team. I'm not ready to say that they're going to win this World Series and that's the end of them. It's hard to go back to back. They do have some guys like Verlander. Verlander opts out and some team goes out there and gives him a contract, as crazy as that might be to hear that, they got the money to spend. I feel like he'll end up coming back there one way or another, but he is 40 years old. But the other guys on the roster, they had some young guys this year that came up. And so it's going to be a dogfight all the way through. It really is. We're set up to do so to a degree. But it depends, James, a little bit on how aggressive we choose to be this offseason. And if DePoto gets stuck in a little bit of a phase of there's only so much I can do because the free agent market sucks and the trades are going to cost us way too much, and we've already offloaded a ton of assets in trades like the Luis one that we made last year, that may be hard for me to make a prediction that, yeah, we're going to do it this year based on that. If we get aggressive, you go get a Correa, I'll be all in on saying, yeah, James. Yeah, absolutely. But it would take a kind of that kind of move, even if it's from a couple of parts coming together for me to get that kind of confidence. It's a good Astro team. Michael YT says, hey, Brando, not the biggest M's fan, but signing Teo was a big win for them. It was big and a great way. That's the start of your offseason. I think that's the beginning of what DePoto's planning on doing. And maybe when we see the full plan of this unveiled, it'll be even more impressive, understanding it's the first step. Y2K says, I'm pretty sure Cooper could play all 8 positions. He's a back-end 40 guy with upside. Yeah, you got something here. I agree. And that he could be maybe that utility guy I was talking about that's a little bit of a need, Y2K. There's that, you do need the utility guy. There always is the guy that can kind of play every position a little bit. And so having a guy like that is useful in the lineup, and getting guys a blow on a day, getting rest at a position without having to call up guys back up and down from AAA. So you need those kind of guys. It's part of what makes a roster work over the course of a season. I like it though too, man. Big Country, what's up, man? Says looking at shortstops, got to get one of them. Oh man, I know. Those are the ones that are looking the juicy tastiest, aren't they? And look back at this list here. You've got Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, Xander Bogaerts, Dansby Swanson. Quite honestly, I think pretty much any of those guys ended up a Seattle Mariner. I think fans would feel overall pretty encouraged at the end of the day. Bogaerts would probably get a little more of a tiny bit of shrug, I think. But I'm hearing a lot of Dansby love out there too over the last couple of days. But that would be the way. That would be the way. Jalen Barcenelia says Carlos Correa is not the dream, laughing out loud. He's definitely the best shortstop free agent, but probably going to be the most expensive. Carlos Correa. Yeah, he is. He's definitely going to cost a lot, Jalen, and he probably is maybe not a likely target for the Mariners. Somebody else might be willing to do it. The Mariners have money to spend, though, here. That's the thing with this, is that they're not hamstrung on not being able to step up and meet other people's offers. Their salary situation's in pretty good shape. So if it comes to that, down to just money, I think we can match it. I think what it really will come down to is, does he really want to come to Seattle? And that might be one of those things where it's the other markets he'd rather maybe go to. Big Country, I like Trey Turner the most. He's a good player, man. And you put that kind of speed in that stadium, it's going to help. You're going to see it turned loose. Definitely will help you win baseball games. So I think there's something to be said for it. Y2K says the thing about baseball free agents supposed to have to overpay or take more risks as opposed to other sports. Yep. That's absolutely right. That's the thing here with this Carlos Correa signing at this point. You're not sitting really on the hook with any bad signings per se. I know people are a little down on Robbie Ray, but I think you're going to get your value out of that contract when it's all said and done. We'll get our value out of a Julio Rodriguez deal when it's all said and done. You've got nothing that you're really, albatross or anchor around the throat of the organization, like when you had the Robinson Cano deal, for instance. So you can afford to go out there and swing it. And I say go swing it, frankly. It beats doing that than making a trade and going back into the farm system more than we already have recently. I would be very much in favor of them going at it. I'm good with Trey Turner too, though. Big Country comes Correa or Turner. I'm kind of on board with both. Turner is still, he's still 29. But Y2K, you're going to have to overpay. If you want to get a prime free agent in here, it's not the biggest of markets. Unless they're completely just loving our culture and what we're building here from that standpoint of it, it's going to require a couple extra mil more. 283 says Carlos Correa plays. Yeah, I feel you on that one. Osama bin Diesel. Hey, Brando, let's talk Hawks. Ethan, fabulous start to the offseason. And if we should not even be the best bat we got, go get Xander. I think this shortstop can make sense here. Good. Have a good night, Ethan. See you back later. 283, I'm down to move JP to second too. I think that's a move that could make a lot of sense here to do that doesn't necessarily I think he'd be fine to second base. I think he'd hold up over there relatively well. And if it's a chance to add an impact bat, that's the way to do it. It'd be great if there was another left fielder out there in free agency you could add that you'd feel good about doing that, but there just isn't that guy out there. Osama bin Diesel says Kyle Lewis owns only 12 career doubles, 130 games and only 12 doubles. Yeah, and I think he's just not the same with his lower legs. I really do. And the warning signs were here were how long it was taking him to get back from those knee surgeries. And though it can take some time on some of that stuff, it was taking a really long time with him. And watching him swing last year, everything seemed to be coming from the upper body. He was torquing and twisting as hard as he could, it seemed, to try to get that swing generated because the lower half wasn't giving him any kind of base to really drive the ball. It stood out to me pretty significantly. And I just don't think he's going to probably end up bouncing back. I don't think the Mariners are looking to make a move they thought he could eventually come back around either, if that was the case, especially considering your needs right now going into this offseason with both corner outfield positions. Daniel Holmes, it's good to see you again. You too, Daniel. Thanks for jumping on into the stream. Osama Ben Diesel says Trader Jerry has hinted he won't sign a big-time free agent. But it makes a lot of sense. I mean, like what you put this together on is there's not really a big-time free agent available for a position they want. We mentioned the shortstops, which would be interesting, but they would require you to move JP. There's not really a second baseman that makes a lot of sense. And while there are other free agents out there available in baseball right now you can go sign, none of them really fit to the need of what you want. So I don't even think it's a matter of, at that point, Trader Jerry, not willing to spend the money at that point. I think that they'll just try to onboard the money then via a trade if they don't go free agency. And that makes a lot of sense, considering the dearth of the market that's out there. Osama says he doesn't want the payroll to be like when Cano and Felix were on the roster. Most of the payroll tied to 4 or 5 players. I mean, that makes sense, I guess, to a degree, Osama. I'm not as much a fan of saying, I don't want to tie it. Like you get great players, you're going to have to pay them. Spreading the money all around, I guess, can sound good to a degree until you don't have the impact bats in your lineup to generate runs, and you're getting into a playoff game against teams like the Astros that do have those kind of bats. That's where we come down on that, Osama. I get where he's coming from on that. And look, the Cano deal was a bad deal, and the Felix deal ended up not being a great deal down the line because he really fell off at the end. But I wouldn't want those 2 deals to preclude me from going out there and signing a big deal, especially now. As I said, if you bring in another big impact bat into this lineup, then I think you are in talks. You could be in talks to compete really with the Astros and how it stands. But that's a big dog out there right now. You know what I mean? You can't go bring out the poodle for that pit bull that we got in the backyard. We knew to get ourselves a wolfhound or a Rottweiler. And it ain't going to work just going back on, well, I don't want to get too big a dog because, when you get a big dog, they get a little cumbersome, which is a little bit of, I feel like Osama Depota might be saying with that comment. And both those 2 signings at the end, probably with Phoenix and Cano, were kind of probably bad signings for different reasons. You were also in a much different state from an organization standpoint when you signed those deals, in trying to generate something for the team, some kind of excitement, in Felix's case, rewarding him for being the good soldier through all those years and never getting any run support. Sean Lee says you have a Mariners podcast as well. Nice. Hell yeah, Sean. I wanted to start getting this channel going here on this side of things. So it's eventually we'll do a Sonics one. When the Sonics come back, I'll create a channel for that. As well. But I do live stream a game. I'm going to probably shoot for next year. I'd like to get at least half the Mariner games live streamed next year. So that'd be 80 games. Might be a little aggressive, but that's going to be the goal for next season. But thanks for jumping in, Sean. James Caldwell, if Julio was a free agent right now, what contract do you think he'd get? Ooh. A 22-year-old Julio going on the free agent market. He would probably get a 15-year deal. The Yankees wouldn't give him $1 billion, would they? The Yankees aren't that crazy. The Yankees would try to do something like that, though. They do the 15-year, they probably give him a 15-year deal with like $50 million a year or something like that. Some crazy amount like that. Yankees would just blow it out of the water. It'd be insane, though. But I'd go with that. I'll go 15 years, $50 million a year. So how's that? What is that? Let me do my math on that one. Yeah, 50. So that'd be like $750 million. 15 years, $750 million deal if Julio was a free agent right now. Y2K says, I want Trey Turner the most as well. Him, France, Julio Hernandez, Cal Suarez, random DH, Kelnick, JP. Pretty good lineup. I think Kelnick can hit 225 with 25 bombs next year. Kelnick hit 225 with 25 bombs. You'd be head over heels with that production because he'd also be giving you good defense out in the outfield. So having that combination between the two things, would help considerably from where you've been with the position recently. And you could platoon him with Haggerty and have him do some of that DH duties as well when you need to call upon that. I'm okay with that. I'd be fully on board with it. I'm not as much in love with Trey Turner as some folks are. I'm totally fine with him. He'd be a fit for the stadium. His speed would work in that stadium. All of that, like no doubt about that. But I'm probably just have more starry-eyed for Correa as much as anything, but that's probably a pipe dream. There's probably no bloody chance that we can get Carlos at this point. But a fella can dream on that. I can dream. Osama Turner has played second base. Okay, well, maybe we just slide him into second then. That would work. And you can keep Crawford's glove at short. I'm with that. Big Country says, unlike the Felix days, our foundation is pretty good right now. Yeah, it's hard for me to try to reference, and with those two signings, I can completely get where Dipoto's coming from with thinking on I'm a big guy on learn your lessons, and even on a just organizational historical lesson to learn, you got to pay attention to where you've gone wrong in the past to not repeat the same errors, right? It's the old axiom, he who does not pay attention to history is doomed to repeat it. And so it makes sense that he goes, here's some cautionary tales here, and here's as to why we wouldn't. But to me, it seems like a little bit of a logical fallacy to say we signed Cano to this free agent deal, and then we re-signed Felix Hernandez to this bad last of his career deal, and both of those two ended up biting us in the butt. So now we're not going to be active in free agency anymore because we don't want to tie too much money to players because of that. That seems kind of loose to me. It seems a little bit of a loose logic that they're applying if that's where he's coming at it from. But I think it's more, he's saying that also just because there isn't that free agent guy out there to really sign. But good point, Big Country. I mean, you had no foundation back then. Zero. Zip. Nada. Felix was it. Party group, house, restaurant, field. Says Cooper Hummel, come to Seattle. Teoscar Hernandez, awesome. Seattle Mariners are awesome. Hey, they are awesome. There's some good moves. It's going to help out the team next year. Teoscar is a better bat out there in right field or left field than anything you were putting in the lineup from anybody else last season. And there's no doubt that it's going to help things out as far as producing more consistent runs. Sean Lee, I want 2 big bats added to our lineup this offseason. 1 down, 1 to go. See, Sean, I'm right with you on this. That's where I stand with this too. You can't just go 1 big bat and then we're going to platoon some things out. We're going to kind of cobble together a DH or cobble together a left field and then hope Kelenic comes in and it's going to be Haggerty. I can't do that. Haggerty had a little bit of the same situation go on that Crawford had. It starts out hitting 300 and it's like, oh man, this guy's got to be a key part of this lineup. You got to keep him in every day. And then slowly but surely, tick, 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 down goes the production over the course of the season and, ends up with the average kind of low for a guy that's not going to hit for a lot of power, though he plays really good defense. You're going, I need a little more certainty than that now in this lineup. I don't want another 18 innings and no runs next year. And I don't think you do that with just 1 bat added to the lineup and hoping, well, the young guys will get better. No, you got to get a little more certainty. So if they do that, Sean, they get 1 more bat to an equivalency of what you brought in with Teoscar. I'll feel pretty good about that. I'll feel like we can run with Houston. It's going to be tough, but we can run with them. James Caldwell says, and Julio's in Seattle for $209 million for 12 years versus the $750 million I was speaking to. Yeah, you're getting him. That's why I love the deal at the Times, James, is that, you've got the Seattle Mariners using foresight here in a way that is so smart because you are going, okay, we have club control over you for these next few years, Julio, arbitration and all that. And we're going to be able to keep you for pennies on the dollar if that's what we want to do. We'll stretch you out through all your rookie period as far as we can get it. Or you get your money in hand now, you get the long-term thing, and you give us a big discount for doing that. And in this case, the discount would be, obviously, I know I'm saying he's not a free agent, so that's part of what drives that is you got all the teams competing for his services, which would drive that price up versus Seattle just has him with the club control. But they're saving that kind of money on this deal for him now. You look at this deal 4 years from now when he's in his prime going for MVPs, and it's going to look like peanuts. So it's a fantastic, it is a fantastic job by Dipoto to get him locked up. Very forward thinking, very smart of them to do. Other major league teams are doing it right now. And I think it's overall, it makes a lot of sense to go this route with it, because once the cost comes due, the price can go very, very high and you get yourself caught in a bind like we saw the Washington Nationals do with Soto this year. And then you end up having to make a move, and maybe you get enough trade assets back to make that worth it, or maybe you end up trading a generational like talent for not the returns. And we've done that before here in Seattle, and it's not great. Vin Diesel, have I heard the rumors about Colton Wong? I have indeed, man. We looked a little bit on that here earlier. I'll bring it back up here. And he's he's an interesting cat. He's been around for a long period of time. 32 years old. 5'7", left-handed hitter. So does give you a left-handed bat in the lineup, which is nice. You do need some of that. You've been a little bit right-heavy-handed driven here as of recent. Teoscar's, of course, right-handed as well. So he gets the lineup a little more right-handed heavy as well with him. Last year, 251. 17 stolen bases, 15 home runs, 24 doubles. Pretty good production. Actually gives you pretty good pop from the second base position of things. Doesn't do a whole lot for me at this point. Does Wong. Good WAR last year. I think he would be okay for you there, Osama, but I'm not sure that he's really going to be, when I'm talking about adding that equivalent bat to Teoscar, I don't know that Colton Wong is that equivalent bat. Maybe close, but I don't think it's quite getting there. It's moving the needle like this, but it's not redlining the needle. And we need a redliner. I need somebody who's going to be able to put the pedal down. And maybe there's not that guy to find at shortstop or second right now. Maybe it's not realistic to think we can get Trey Turner or Carlos Correa, and so you're going to be stuck having to go for a Colton Wong because there's just no other options. And if that's the case, then it kind of is what it is then, White2KH says we have to sign a veteran, DH, Nelson Cruz, JD Martinez type. Not actually those two, but you get me. Oh, yeah. I was going to say, yeah, not those two, but what those two have been in recent years. Yes. You've got to get over somebody who hits 200 with some marginal power, which is what the DH has been. And you should be able to find that out somewhere. That's not the highest cost item out there to go get. A guy that's just a hitter who can hit 230, 240 and hit with marginal power even. I mean, hell, even that over what we've had with Santana last year. I mean, there was times he was flirting with 190. Sean Lee says, I miss the Sonics. Glad I got to witness the 80s and 90s Sonics from Dale Ellis, Tom Chambers, and the X-Man to the Glove, and the Rain Man, maybe one day. Very well said, man. Wait one day, and I come from the same generation of kids that grew up on Dale Ellis, Tom Chambers, and the X-Man. And fun teams back then. And then you got the Rain Man with Gary Payton coming through and George Karl and that whole situation for a time. And yeah, it was deeply entrenched in our culture here was basketball. Definitely a basketball region in a lot of ways. And unfortunately, still haven't gotten them back. I do think they're going to come back within the next couple of years, Sean. And when they do, I will be creating a channel around them because I'll go back to watching NBA a little bit more than I do now. I don't watch it as much now because I'm like, you took my team away. Screw you. But maybe I'll finally put that anger down at that point. Daniel Holmes says Correa would be an amazing pick, but the price would be very, very high, especially with how many teams want him. It would. And I guess it's a decision, Daniel, you don't just make in a bit of a vacuum where you say, are we willing to meet the price or are we not? Because then you could also say it's a matter of, well, if the cost gets so high here, rather than taking him as player A, what about player B over here as another option, maybe even via trade, if we're going to be willing to pay this big of a price? Pay just a little bit less of that price to go get an equivalent player in another direction of things. That could also be a better way of just a guy that we're not maybe talking as much about. We're not maybe as much aware that is even available out there. Correa is going to cost a lot. Correa is going to cost quite a bit of coin to bring him in, and it may be too high. I can totally understand those saying that As Osama bin Diesel was pointing out above, as Depota would say, I don't want to have all my salary tied up into just one guy like that. Makes a lot of sense. It does. And maybe Correa's played his best baseball up to this point already. He's 28 years old, going to be 29 years old. So, I mean, he still should be in his prime for a little bit longer, but do you want to sign him to a 7-8 year deal or something? Maybe not. Maybe not. I would like to do it because I'd like to be more into a gopher mode now because I think you have the pieces set up right now. I think everything is I think you're going to get Julio come back next year, probably hitting near 300 and putting 35 bombs into the seats. I think Cal Raleigh's going to come back next year hitting 240, 250 for you. He's going to put 35 bombs into the seats. I think you're going to have a lot with this lineup, so let's take advantage of these guys starting to go and roll. Eugenio Suarez, he'll drop another 30 for you. So you're going to have the power in that lineup still. I think you'll still have the pitching as well. I mean, hell, the starting rotation, it looks just killer. Sean Lee says, Cano's lazy man jog down the first base line always drove me crazy. Yeah, he was not a man who played the game hard. He's so smooth with it. He's just so smooth with it. Is he smooth or is he just slowly taking his time? King Pokemon Nation says World Cup. I'm not a soccer guy, man. I'm just not. Osama says the Mariners need the money to sign Gilbert and Kirby. See, I'm a little bit different in the way I view it, Osama, with the pitchers. Because those guys, I don't look like how I look at it with Julio or even a guy like Cal Raleigh, where I'll be willing to get out ahead of their arbitration years. With the pitcher, because those arms can come and go, Tommy John can come and go overnight, I'm not as apt to be, let me get out ahead of your arbitration years and start sticking you guys on big deals at this point when I don't have to. If they want to take a heavy-duty discount at that point, then okay, but they're taking a discount. And Kirby just came up to the major leagues, Osama, last year. You've got a lot of, Gilbert's only in his second season. You still have a lot of club control over both of these two guys. And frankly, more of what I'd like to see them do is take advantage of that by adding other players to go on addition to them, not by giving them contracts, which to me, it's a little early on both those guys to be paying them. Osama says, I know everyone wants the offense, but in T-Mobile Park, the Mariners are better with pitching and defense with no offense rather than all offense and no pitching. Yes, if I have to choose a way to go on the type of team I construct, you would want to go with better pitching and defense than going with all hitting. I agree with you there, Osama. But the thing with that I think is a little bit lost in that is that you had no hitting too many times last year. You could not generate any hits, any runs. I mean, I sat there watching him for 18 innings flailing at the baseball, not even getting close to generating a run. 18 innings. You played 2 equivalent major league games and you could not get one run. And that was not just a one-off. That was something you saw a lot over the course of the year. Heavily reliant on the home run ball because you didn't have guys that could consistently stack hits one on top of each other. Yeah, I want my pitching to be solid, and I want my bullpen to be good, and I want my fielding and defense to be good. But those things are set right now. The pitching is set. You've got your starting staff. You've got your bullpen in place. What isn't set is the hitters. And again, I don't know in Gilbert, he's played 2 years. I don't know how he's earned necessarily the contract extension or even to be thinking about that at this point, nor Kirby. And if it came down to it where you were spending money on other guys and you couldn't afford those guys on a contract, you could always move them for other assets to rebuild in other ways with it if you had to go that route. Not that I want to. I probably want to end up signing him to a contract extension too. But with pitchers, let them get through their arbitration years. It fluctuates too wildly with those guys as far as arm injuries. And then if they suffer the major arm injuries, what they are post-arm injury, I would be very dicey about going too early on the pitchers. Y2K says, are you signing a left-handed first base in DH France? It's a way to go too. That would be an okay approach. James Caldwell says 7th in MVP voting this year already. Laughing out loud. Julio is ridiculous. Oh, he is. Best prospect we've had come through here, obviously, since A-Rod. And I don't know where his ceiling quite is at yet, James. I don't. I don't know if I can say that I only know this guy will ever hit, just 30, 35, 40 home runs. He might be one of those guys who puts a couple of 50 bomb years up when it's all said and done. And as young as he was to produce as quickly as he did in his first rookie year, sky is the limit, man. Sky is the limit. Daniel W. says, just tuning in, summary on Teo. Yep, and I've got a little article I'm going to read here in a second that'll go into a little bit more of a detail on him, Daniel, that I kind of pulled out from last year that was written up on him. I thought was a good little article. Really, really good professional hitter. He's got good power. He can drive the ball to all points on the field. He's even got a swing where he can inside out it and put it down the right field line when he's trying to look for a particular pitch, especially on breaking pitches running away from him. You can't just hit him with breaking balls or off-speed pitches. He's going to be right on top of it. He does a very good job of knowing what the pitcher's trying to do against him. He understands the plan of attack and how they're going to try to work him, and he'll look for pitches and spots, and then he will try to drive it. It's a very good level stroke, not as much the uppercut-like swing that you get from an Eugenio Suarez at times. He's going to get his consistent line drive hits. He's going to get some good. It's going to be a little bit like what you go Ty France at times, where he does a really good job of getting the barrel of the bat on the ball consistently. But I like how he uses all fields. He's definitely coming off a pretty good year last year, where he's remained consistent over these last 3 years. He was a late bloomer. A guy that even up until when it finally the light bulb turned on in 2020, he was still sent down kind of one last final time to AAA before it did turn on. But over the last 3 years, he's been right there. And coming off career high in doubles last season, you feel very good about that. On the downside of it, Daniel, he does strike out quite a bit. It has improved in recent years, so it's still a higher than average rate than what you see in Major League Baseball, but it's not as, let's say, putrid as it was there for a little while as it was with him. He's not also going to draw a lot of walks in conjunction with that, so he's not a control the zone type hitter that we've been used to here recently. As a fielder, it's a little bit of probably a light step back from Haniger. He is a little bit below average as a fielder in right field. So he's got a good arm. He's got a good live arm, but getting to balls and stuff, he's not the most fleetest of foot. But it's a good move. It's a plus move for this team. It improves the position from where it was last year, and I'm very much in favor of it. Hopefully, Daniel, it's just a beginning step here and not a finishing or here's our bedrock move. I hope that's not the only thing. Osama Ben Diesel says, can you find a reliever for Flexen? You could. Hell yeah. Starting pitcher is always going to be more valuable than a reliever would, even a top-notch reliever. And Flexen eats up a lot of innings, and he looked pretty good last year as a back-end starter on a rotation. So yeah, absolutely, Osama. Probably even you could get a guy that's like a little bit of an equivalent of like what you had with Mako in the trade that you included for this Cooper Hummel kid. Where you had to trade your guy who's eventually going to be a reliever in the bullpen along with Swanson. Maybe you can get back an equivalent for that if you were to make that deal with Flexen. Sean Lee says, too bad Kyle Lewis didn't work out due to injuries. Was really looking forward to a Julio, Lewis, and Kelnick outfield. That would have been a dream scenario, Sean. It really would have been a dream scenario. And not only would you have a talented young outfield, you would have had a talented young cheap outfield, which would have then allowed you to spend your money in other places on the team. And it would have made this pathway maybe even a little bit easier. But unfortunately, in the case of Lewis and Kelnick, both guys just, for different reasons, haven't gotten to that spot yet. Maybe Kelnick's case, he will eventually, maybe Lewis will eventually bounce back. But I think the team had to make a call on one of these two guys, if not both of these guys in this situation. And Lewis is going to Arizona. Danny W says, sorry to bring this up here, but now Broncos starting linebacker is injured during practice. No KJ Hamler, no Jerry Jeudy. Bring on that number 1 pick. Go Texans, go Raiders. That's right. Now we can talk football in here too. I don't mind talking anything related in regards to that. And they did. Broncos lost another starting linebacker for this game. Going against the Raiders, they've already lost the Raiders once this year. It is a big deal for the draft pick here, Daniel, because you do lose the Raiders now again, and that would mean that you would be below the Raiders versus the Raiders are number 3 where they're picking right now. That would put you at number 3, and the Broncos are projected to go to the 3rd overall pick at this point, which if we get the 3rd overall selection in this draft, that would be obscene. Obscene. So I don't know if it's going to go that direction with it, but let's hope the Raiders or Texans go. Let's get those Texans with a couple more wins, man. Get a couple more wins for the Texans. Let's start getting a few of these teams with a few more pushed up. Louis Lagasakas says, "This is the guy you wanted. This is the guy you wanted. He can give you 2 to 3 home runs, and can slug and maybe hit 30." Well, thank you, Louis, for remembering, man. I appreciate you remembering me saying that. It's kind of strange to me, Louis. It's like this has been a year where, on my Seahawks side of it, I was looking for him to draft certain guys, like literally before the picks they made in the draft. I'm like, well, I hope this is Boy Mafe, and then they selected Boy Mafe. I hope this is Charles Cross, and they got Charles Cross. I hope this is Tariq Woolen, and then they selected Tariq Woolen. And in Hernandez's case, we were sitting there during the Blue Jays series. You were with me in here, and I'm going, man, he's such a good player. He's so good. Can we get him? Is he a free agent? And the chat was laughing at me, and they're like, well, he's not even a free agent, so stop daydreaming. And I was like, but he's good. And they're like, yeah, we know you like him. Tough. You don't get to have him. And now we get him. So I don't know if I'm somehow controlling the universe in some weird way from afar without meaning to, but that's why I'm trying to say Carlos Correa a lot now. I'm trying to use my power for further good. trying to see if the superpower thing's a real thing here, because I can't believe we actually went and got the guy I randomly was just, he hit those 2 home runs. But even beyond the 2 home runs, he was good throughout that series. I forget what he hit, but I think he was good the whole playoffs. In fact, that's one thing I wanted to take a look at with him, with Teoscar, is how he's been as a playoff hitter. Because they feel like he was just money that whole series. Let's take a peek here. Mm-hmm. All right, let me look on this. Why is it hard to see this? So I'll have to go to Major League. Oh, they don't show the these stats suck, man. They don't show the postseason stuff. Well, that's lame. Oh, there we go. Let's see, postseason cumulative here. So he hit, I guess he only hit 250. 250 with 2 home runs, 3 runs, a walk, strikeout. 2020 hit 143. So I guess he's not as clutch as I thought, but still a good hitter. And you're right, man, Louis. I love the fact they picked him up. Sean Lee says, who would your dream outfield be for us? Well, Teoscar's out there right now, so it's got to include him in the dream because he's not going anywhere in the foreseeable future. Who would be the left fielder if I could get somebody out there? Good question. Let me give a quick look here. Just kind of, I know there's gonna be a name. I don't know. Can I move Ronald Acuna to left field? Do I have to be realistic with this dream of an option? Or can I just grab anybody? Like probably, the dream would be like get Shohei Ohtani. And I'll put Hernandez out in left field and he can just find his way out there. And I'll do a lot of DHing with Shohei. And then I'll platoon out with left field in the other one. That'd be my dream. Let's go make a trade with the Angels and be like, look, your organization is in horrible shape. You guys are awful. And, why don't you let us give you some stuff, get your guys back to respectability. You don't have them signed to a contract extension anyway, and you just give them to us. We'll take them. That's my dream. That'd be my dream, I think. I like Ohtani a lot, and yeah, that would, no chance it's happening, but William Leonard, isn't T-Mobile a defensive park anyway? We have to have some hitters to make up for that. Yes, it is a defensive-based park. And that's one of the reasons why you do want to lean to pitching and fielding kind of first and foremost. But that's also where, when you've built that as the base of your team and that foundation is there and it exists on your team as it does right now, we can go through the positions from Julio to Eugenio to Cal. And you've got solid fielders across the board. Crawford, that's not the issue right now. When it comes to pitching, you've got that. But the hitting is one of those things where you have to raise it to a marker of respectability. Otherwise, it's a thing that will hold you back and prevent you from taking that next step as a team, no matter how good the pitching is, no matter how good the fielding is, no matter how cool a nickname you've applied to your bullpen. It won't matter at that point because you just simply can't generate a run in even 18 damn innings. And they've got to find a way to bump that up a bit. Osama Ben Diesel says, I don't see the 300 next season for Julio, but 30 home runs and 30 stolen bases I do see. Yeah, it could be. I mean, hell, he hit 275 his rookie year, didn't he? And then what he ended up hitting was at the end of the day. So, I mean, 20 points, second year. Let's see here. So, oh, dude, he hit 284 last year. You don't see 300? You don't see 300, Osama? He hit 284 his rookie year. You got to see 300 out of that. I mean, he's going to be 16 points better than he was this year, right? What a good year he had. 284, 28 home runs. My God. Louis says it's a contract year, so he may play fluky. He may, Louis. Comes out there and drops 40 bombs out there. Get some of that good HGH rocking from South America. Yeah. Guys go in contract years. They ball out. We see that in every sport, don't we, Louis? And you never know. The Mariners could also end up looking to get him into a contract extension as well. They've done that a couple of times before, so that also could be a possibility here that they're looking at too. But guys do tend to play at that last year at their best. Osama Ben Diesel says, breaking news: the Mariners have traded 2 first-round picks, 2 seconds to the New York Yankees for second baseman Russell Wilson. Set anchor. Wouldn't that be hilarious if they traded for him and then he retired from football? It's like, I really just always wanted to be a baseball player. It's what I really want to do. This is where I really need to be. Fraternal Cloud says, do we keep Frazier? I don't think we do. I think that they're looking to upgrade the position at this point, and I don't think they feel good about what Frazier's given them as of recent. Osama Ben Diesel, I said a red liner for Flexen. What's a red liner? I don't know what you mean by red liner. Kronos 1009, Brandon is just an inside source in both the Mariners and Seahawks front office. Exactly, man. I'm just tapped in. I got to keep my sources anonymous though, so I have to say it's my psychic abilities actually. Wink, wink, wink. Kronos, he did have 2 home runs. He knocked 2 out on Robbie Ray in that postseason, did Hernandez. I felt like he had a lot of hard hit balls that whole postseason. Like everything he was hitting was rocketed. Judgment Day in left field. Sam the Great says the Hernandez trade surprised me. Did the Blue Jays give up? No, I think the Blue Jays obviously have got some other hitters that are a little younger that they want to get locked in and paid up probably. That they're Guerrero and Bichette. You've got some parts there that they like that they probably are more interested in making into the nucleus a bit. This guy is 30 years old, and they did have a look at it probably coming into this year. Like, we either let him play through this year into right field for us and then get nothing for him and let him walk, or we go to Seattle and we help beef up our bullpen a little bit. Swanson gives us now a really top flight righty out of the pen, and we get another prospect on top of it just to reinforce that, making sure somehow, some way we're going to get a good arm out of that pen as we go into the future. So it's a little bit like what we're doing on our side of it, the Jays are doing on their end. We're giving up a little bit of from what is a very big strength from us to build up a weakness. And I don't know that I don't know enough about the Blue Jays bullpen to call it a strength or weakness, but I would imagine that this is going to take it at least from wherever it is to improve it from where it was. And that's at the expense of a lineup that produces a lot of runs and was really good last year, offensively speaking, can afford to maybe lose a bat like Hernandez. So no, I don't think that they gave up. Brando2345 says, any center prospects you like for the Hawks other than Jarrett Patterson? He's just been dealing with an ankle foot injuries past 2 seasons, and he tore his pec in the offseason 1 year. The Schmidt kid from Minnesota is pretty interesting. I've got a couple names, Brando, on my list right now that I'm due to scout here over the next couple of days. So maybe check, even if not this Sunday, next Wednesday, we'll be doing some discussion on some potential guys that'll be available, and I need to take a little bit of a closer look. So I've liked the center prospects that I've taken a little first blush at, but nobody's like, there aren't any game changers. There's not going to be any real first round guys, I don't think, and you very well may be potentially having no second round guys as well. Somebody will probably be taking the second round because of a need, but I don't know if there's a talented enough of one to go in the second round yet. But I am a little early in the process on looking at the prospects. Louis says, I think Jays may make a big trade. If we get Ronald Acuna, we can win the division. I would love Ronald Acuna, man. That would be, I don't think the Braves would give him up. That's one of their little bedrock guys, that's for sure. But I was asked to dream, and I dreamed big. I did for sure. And I agree. I do think that this does probably mean that the Jays are looking to make some other move too. They certainly in that division with the Yankees and Orioles coming up, and the Tampa Bay Devil Rays are really tough. I mean, I talk about us having to really look at the lens of dealing with the Astros and how good they are, and you've got to compete with them. That whole division is just going to be a slog to get through. And Boston's not just going to sit on their back heel. They're going to push themselves forward into this position too. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and the Jays may be looking at making a big splash, go for a move now to make that happen, because of where they think everything stands. Daniel W says, how disappointing is Kyle Lewis after being Rookie of the Year? Already done. You don't see things like this happen in baseball very often, Daniel, so it is very disappointing. It's not something like we can look at in the NFL, and guys get injured often in the NFL, or they'll go from being on a high point in a rookie year and never return back to there ever again. And that part gets tough to watch sometimes, because you go, what happened in one season? Thomas Rawls, what the hell happened to you? But in baseball, it's not the case. You do see guys get old early. You see guys do break down over time. But to break down right out the box, right after a Rookie of the Year season, is an anomaly big time. And that is not something that you see very often. And I think, though, that is what has happened here, Daniel. I think that he has those surgeries, and that the knee didn't bounce back from those surgeries very well for whatever reason. I don't think last year he ever really had his legs under him. It wasn't like at the end of the year, Daniel, he was getting stronger as the year went along. He was not doing good in AAA into September, right? Or into the end of the year in AAA there. And so that's, I think, indicative of he might have just been what he's going to be going forward. And the Diamondbacks are essentially taking trying to get a lotto ticket. It's not a good chance this lotto ticket's going to cash in, but if it does cash in, it'll be amazing for us. We'll have a cornerstone outfielder out there if it does, but it has a very tiny bit of a chance of happening. And it sucks for Lewis on it, but I do think the Mariners were smart to move on. There were rumors he was disgruntled with the situation. Makes a lot of sense that they went, okay, we just got to call this a day. It isn't going in the right direction here. We've remained patient on it for quite a bit of time, and he's not coming out the other side of it. It's weird is that he was mashing last year right before the concussion, and that was the real odd part with it. But remember too, with the Rookie of the Year, we got to look at that with a little bit of an asterisk, because that was the COVID year. That was the reduced year. It wasn't like he did 162 games to earn that award necessarily. So probably got to look at that through a little bit of a different lens as well in retrospect. Osama says Aaron Judge is friends with Griffey. Okay. Maybe you can talk him into it. Tough part with it is Aaron Judge has probably got at least a little bit of marketability out there, which is a hard thing for baseball players to capture. Just ask Mike Trout, who's been one of the faces of baseball for 7, 8, 9 years here. And he's actually been playing out of LA, and he can't get a sniff nationally as far as his celebrity status theoretically would go. And Aaron Judge, rumors are he wants to be more in a bigger market to be able to get off, to be able to put that on brighter display. I feel like if not the Yankees just coming in with the crazy offer to give him something, I feel like the Giants are a team that might come in on that one and swoop him up. That one seems like a very real possibility. Big Country says 300 is very doable. Second year plus the shift is going away. That's right. Shift will help. And let's look at, so we have in Ken Griffey Jr.'s case, Ken Griffey Jr. went from 1989, his rookie year, and hitting 264 to Ken Griffey Jr.'s second year in the league, he hit 300. So Ken Griffey improved by 36 points on his batting average into year 2. By year 3, he was hitting 327. And Griffey's power numbers, Griffey didn't hit over 28 home runs in a year like Julio did until he was into 1993. So Griffey was a younger player coming up at that point, but when Julio was 21 years old and Griffey was 21 years old, Griffey put 22 out, Julio put 28. So in Griffey, you've got a huge leap from year 2. He got up to 3. He really jumped up with his batting average. Let's look at Alex Rodriguez. Alex Rodriguez, so Alex Rodriguez in 1994 hits 241. 1995. Oh, wait. No, I'm wrong on that. Sorry. So 1994 hit 204, and then 1995 he hit 232. But he only did play his first full season really with I'm in the major leagues all the time, not just a whatever cup of coffee, was 1996 where he hit 358. So A-Rod went from 232 to 358. So, the historical markers are here in our favor for, at least with when we've had prodigies in the past, they've taken a jump of good 20 to 30 point jump, if not bigger in A-Rod's case, if not 100-point jump from a batting average standpoint. So yeah, Julio will absolutely be hitting 300 next year. He will get there. And the shift is definitely going to change some things. Corona says taking the shift away will help up the batting average of a good majority of the league, I feel. It will. Averages will start to go back to a little more of a reasonable place, I think. You're going to get less 190 hitters and 200 hitters in the lineup too. So I like that the shift's being taken away. It sucks in certain respects of it because I do like the challenging of hitters, but I can't deny the fact that pitchers right now are pitching at a place that we've never seen before in Major League history. Their stuff is as awesome as we've ever seen. There's as many guys that throw with as awesome a stuff as we've ever seen. You've got to do something to kind of counterbalance this somehow, to make the game a little more enjoyable to watch. It's no fun watching 18 innings of no runs. None. It's not fun at all. Fraternal Cloud, hope Crawford can improve. Had a disappointing season offensively. He did. And it sucks too because he started out so hot, earned that contract extension, and then just it just steadily through the year, it's like watching some stocks, on the market where just a little bit by little bit keeps decreasing on the average, and I like what he does bring to the plate. I like his approach. I like his willingness to take pitches. I like how he goes with the pitch. There's a lot that he does with the stick that I do like. And I think in certain respects that the 250 average he finished off with was not indicative of the year offensively he necessarily had. But you would like to see that average up more around the 275 range with Croft, because again, a guy that's not going to give you much power. So at least give me a little bit of the average there with the on-base percentage. Osama bin Diesel says, remember Brando, the defending World Series champion, the defending World Series championships have offense and shouldn't get a run in 17 innings. The defending World Series championships had offense and couldn't get a run in 17 innings. Well, that part's true, Osama, but then they were also up 2-0 in that series at that point, right? And they were playing on the road, and they're playing on the road in horrific conditions as far as the forest fires were going, and you could not really breathe very well when you're in the stadium, because it wasn't like you couldn't breathe, but you could feel it. So there was a little bit of they're easing off in that game a little bit. They're like, well, if we happen to lose this one game out here in Seattle, it's not the worst thing. We'll still be set up fine to be able to close this thing off when we have to close this thing off. They weren't as much pressed to do that. And, you did shut them out through those 17 innings, but I mentioned the 17 innings as much as anything, Osama bin Diesel, because the 17 innings of no offense for the Astros was not indicative of what you saw from their offense throughout the course of the season more often than not. A lot of the times through this year with this Mariner offense, especially when they couldn't get the home run ball going, this was what you saw from their offense. It was representatory of what they would bring to the field way too often. Too often for a team that wants to have World Series aspirations. You can't be that dead when it comes to being able to produce runs so often, so consistently. And that's the part, that's why I continue to reference back to it, is I just don't think that's what the Astros were this year as much. I think that's what we were at times this much, heavily relying on the starting pitching, the bullpen, and the fielding, which you can do to a degree, but there comes a point where you're leaning on it too much. Eric Wallace. So what are your thoughts on the Kyle Lewis trade? I think they're getting something for kind of nothing at this point, Eric. I don't think he had a lot of value to the team going forward. I think there's a very likelihood that they might have non-tendered him as we got through this offseason, and he would have ended up being released for nothing at that point. So you got something for nothing. The kid that they brought in here, Cooper Hummel, is interesting. He's a guy that can play a lot of different positions. He is got a good on-base percentage relative to where his average is. Obviously, hitting 276 last year isn't great, but he's 100 points higher on his on-base percentage. So he will draw walks. He can play almost every position out there. That part is really good in that respect of things. He's going to give you a backup plan if you have some issues with Tom Murphy in the backup catcher position as well. So it's good to have some insurance on that sort of thing. But this really isn't about adding Cooper. It's just as much about, Eric, how far Lewis has fallen as far as that knee goes and where he is as a hitter. And maybe he's just in a tough mental spot and it's not his knees anymore. It's just getting the confidence back. I think the Mariners making this trade, it's indicative of it is the knees, and the knees aren't due to get better. I would reckon to guess that you'd hear things like bone on bone or something right now in reference to Kyle in the shape of those knees and where they're at. So, it sucks that you had a guy that was a rookie of the year that has fallen this fast, but it does make sense, Eric, with what's gone on with those knees. It makes sense with what we saw from him on the field last year. It's a trade that you kind of had to make. You already have a disgruntled prospect guy in Jared Kelnick. You don't really need two of these guys bitching and moaning about being sent to AAA when they're not hitting, and that's a little bit of what we heard was going on with Lewis in the background of things too. I'm not saying he was a complainer or anything like that, just that it's understandable. The kid was rookie of the year and he can't find a spot back up onto the roster to be getting some bats to get himself going. But you got to earn that also when you have a team that's in the thick of things and they're not just a team trying to find their way like the team was back when he first came up. Osama, in 36 innings, the Astros only have the lead in 6 against the Mariners. Well, yeah, but they swept us also at the same point in time. So, that may be the case, but you end up still sweeping them. And damn near half those innings are in that one game with no runs. So it's a little sample size too. Louis, am I nervous about Robbie Ray? No. I think he's going to be a fine starter for us going forward in the future. I don't think he's going to be a Cy Young Award winning candidate, but I think he'll be a good number 4 or 5 pitcher in the rotation. And I think you can rely on him to eat up innings in that way and come out and provide you a pretty good season when it's all said and done. So I think as long as the expectation level is put in the right place with him, he brings value. If you think of him in the level of he needs to be a Cy Young Award winner, that's what we bought him for, that's what we paid for. He's not going to give you that. That's not who he is. As Chrono says, he's basically 4 starter. And from that angle, I'm good with that. I'm fine with that. Fraternal Cloud says, I think Kirby's going to be an ace very soon. I agree, man. As Big Country says right below you, I do believe he's got the most upside of, I don't know if he's got the most upside of any pitcher in this rotation because Luis is freakish with his stuff. I mean, it's top-notch level freakish. It's like Castillo's got a very real chance pitching in the stadium like he is. Remember, he's going from that Cincinnati bandbox to our big vacuous stadium there for pitchers. So Luis Castillo very well could be a Cy Young guy for you next year. But I think Kirby's going to be very close to getting up to that spot very soon and certainly has an upside that can match where Castillo is at. His ability to pound the zone with his plus stuff. What do you have that one start where he started out 26, 27 straight pitches with strikes? Just shows you the command of zone he has. And a guy, this is why I say why you got to take away that shift, because the amount of pitchers that can throw with this type of stuff and still hit their spots and still be pinpoint is just, some of these hitters have sometimes no chance with it a little bit. But the starting rotation is going to be the strength of this team that we lean on going forward. Osama bin Diesel, guess who is a friend of super agent Scott Boras? Pete Carroll. Both are friends since college. Game changer? Well, I think were they not like college roommates or something? Osama? I think. Game changer? Why would that be a game changer? Daniel Holmes says Julio and Pena, by far the best rookies this year. Definitely. And I think Julio, doesn't it suck too that there's always the one voter who's got to be the asshole? Like, it annoys the hell out of me that like Griffey went into the Hall of Fame and there was one voter who had just decided preeminently, he had decided that all the hitters in that area were suspect for roids. And so no hitter could be voted into the Hall of Fame because of that. So you didn't get the 100% consensus on Griffey. There was one guy who didn't vote him in. And then on the Rookie of the Year voting, Julio should have been the consensus, but one a-hole out there had to pull him back on the one vote. So it's not just I forget the word I'm trying to use here, but where you get the 100% of the vote essentially, which it should have been. Julio should have been just far and away 284 as rookie or 28 bombs. Like, how do you not? Who are you? Who else are you? I know there's some other good rookies, but nobody else is having a better year than that. Nobody. No one. I was on the Angels playing Anaheim, not LA, but I see your point. Mookie Betts became a household name. Yeah, I think of Anaheim like as LA. I mean, it's, it's like a borough basically of LA. Yeah, and Mookie hasn't either. It's hard to get much pub for these baseball players. Some of it though, Osama is just Major League Baseball's stupidity with how they market their guys and market their sport, and they don't have a clue of what they're doing at times with it, which just sucks because there's so many other little things you could be doing that they're not. Fraternal Cloud, watching Robbie Ray against the Astros in 2023 is going to give me PTSD. Hopefully we don't have to put him out as a starter or in the playoffs if we face them again, if it gets to that. But yeah, he's going to get a couple starts against them next year. We'll see how he can hold up in that respect of things. He struggled against them this year. They were his kryptonite. I think if you probably took away the Astros and him versus the rest of the league versus just the Astros last year, his ERA probably dips down a whole, a quarter of a point. Louis says, why did you pay $100 million plus to be a 4? He was supposed to be an ace. See, I don't know that I think he was ever supposed to be an ace necessarily. I mean, that's a little bit of the scuttlebutt, and that may have been something people talked about when he was first signed. But I didn't look at his career prior to us signing him, Louis, and go, here's an ace of a staff through the course of his long major league career. You had a guy who played more often than not, was a solid plus pitcher in this sport, better than average starting rotation pitcher, who had a year where he happened to perform a little bit above that as an outlier. But you don't want to take his outlier season and make that the rule of thumb. It's an outlier. It's an anomaly. You would take more of what he had done over a 4 or 5 year period as a general average, distill that down, and make that what you expect from him going forward. So I never saw him in the realm of looking at him as an ace myself. This is why I'm perfectly happy with the money we spent for him for a 4 starter. If he gives me a 4 starter who's going to win 14 to 15 games a year, have a 3.75 ERA or 3.5, something 3.6 ERA, whatever in that area of it with a good whip, I'm going to be fine with that. Eats up nearly 200 innings, let's say. That's appropriate value for me at the $100 million mark. I know $100 million's a lot and it sounds like a lot, but inflation's a bitch and prices are going up all the time. And what you used to spend for a pitcher like that'd be a 4-starter on a 4-year, $50 million deal. Now you're spending a 4-year, $100 million deal, especially because this all doesn't just happen in a vacuum cleaner or in a vacuum. You also have the fact that there's a scarcity of starting pitchers that were available on the market last year. They needed to upgrade the rotation. They needed to get another arm in there. You didn't want to make a trade for it. There weren't any other guys outside of Robbie Ray to go sign at that point. That also then factors into it. And if they hadn't assigned Robbie Ray and then just sat on the money, everybody would be screaming at the top of their lungs, why didn't you spend the money? Why didn't you spend any of the money? So it's like, it's not a bad deal to me when you really take the totality of it in shape. If you come into the deal looking at it with expectations, he's got to be A, B, C, and D, then I think it's going to look a little bit more like a failure to you. Sean Lee, would I like to see an upgrade over Marco Gonzalez? I'm relatively, when it comes to the 5th starter in the rotation, I'm pretty good with rolling with what we got in him. I think he more often than not gives you a guy that's very similar in what he provides. He's not similar to Robbie Ray, but he provides a guy that is going to eat up innings. More often than not, he's going to pitch pretty well for you and keep you in ball games. A guy that knows what he's doing out on the mound, has a good plan about going about it. When he doesn't have his stuff, he's going to get rocked. But more often than not, he's at least got a good control on his stuff, and he's able to spot his pitches where he wants to put them. So that doesn't tend to happen at too high a rate for me that would preclude me from keeping him here. If you have an opportunity to upgrade, sure, but I don't want to go and make that a high priority. As to me, really the priority here, Sean's got to be putting the extra resources we have to invest this offseason into the offensive side of the ball. We need to start generating like more runs every game. That's where the issue lies with this team. And quite frankly, that's where the issue has lied with this team going on a couple of years now. So this is not just some new issue under the sun. Osama says thoughts on bringing in Cody Bellinger. Let me double check on him. So Cody Bellinger played with the Dodgers last year, hitting .210 in 144 games played. Just making sure man, he's only 27. Cody's just had a fall, a sharp, stiff fall from grace. And I don't think that's going to be a move that's going to do a whole lot for me. It's odd that he's this young and that he's kind of fallen apart like this, like he has. Over the last 3 years, he's hit .239, 165, and .210 this last season. 500 at bats this year to hit .210. Still hit 19 home runs. It's a big pitcher's park out there in LA. So, that's probably something to take into account. 27 doubles. So, some moderate power with .210. But this would smell to me of basically Carlos Santana 2.0. This seems very Carlos Santana as far as a move goes. So I'd probably say, nah, I probably wouldn't want to do that. Big Country says, I'd rather have Flexen, but Marco's fine. Yeah. And if my lineup was a little more solidified, if there wasn't a sort of huge need right now to go address what's going on with the lineup, I might be more apt to come back and look at Marco. But I think you've got other stuff. Bigger fish to fry is the term that comes to my mind. Kronos 109 says, don't forget we went into 2021 with Marco as our ace and all the hopes on rookie Logan Gilbert compared to last season where Marco could barely stay on the starting rotation. Yeah, good point, man. It's a good point. How far we've come from where we were as far as expectations and especially that rotation, to your point on it. Dipoto's done a great job of that. It's been obviously the youngsters coming up, but these are also young, highly picked guys in these pitchers and Kirby's and Gilbert's. These are guys that weren't some 45th round guys that just suddenly came out of nowhere. These were guys you targeted very high in the draft and thought that could be special pitchers. And they're showing you they can be special pitchers, which should only provide encouragement as far as the front office and the moves they make, and give you confidence in them when they do make a move that may even be drawing some questions from people at times, which DePoto doesn't do a lot of. Most of the moves he makes, the Mariner fans are like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I see what you're doing there. So it's a long way we've come with it. But Marco is a fifth versus being asked to be the ace of the staff. So a far, far, far away we've come. And it's a good place to be. It's a good place to be. Daniel Holmes says, I'll always look at the mistakes of putting Ray to pitch against Jordan and completely changing the tone of the game and series. Yes, Daniel, I was not a fan of the Jordan Robbie Ray situation there. I don't like bringing out guys that have been in the league for years as starting pitchers and bringing them out of the bullpen and then asking them to try to be bullpen guys. It's a mentality thing. It's, those starting pitchers have their whole rituals they go through pre-game to prepare themselves, and you can laugh and scoff at it, but it's been well put together for years for them to get that stuff. And now you just have them, get up and start warming up. You're going to just get in there and go. And, I always like to reference back on this one, Daniel. It's like the Randy Johnson moment in 95, where Randy comes out of the pen, game 5 against the Yankees, and everybody's on their feet and the whole crowd's hyped up and he's got the juice of the whole stadium at his back there. And you get us through this, Randy, and he gives up a base hit and a run. Let the starting pitcher be the starting pitcher, and let your bullpen that is supposed to go by the axiom, the Bomballeros, literally have earned a nickname. Trust the bullpen to go get it done. Definitely one of those moments where I felt like there was really 2 moves in the playoffs that bothered me with our manager service. I thought he did relatively okay, but the move of Robbie Ray out of the pen for Jordan, I didn't like. And then the move to take out a Eugenio Suarez when he got on base in the last playoff game, when you needed the bat and you took his bat out of the lineup, and you just brought one more empty hole to the lineup at that point. I didn't like that. Suarez isn't slow enough in that moment to have to dictate you bring out the base runner. I hated that move. Daniel W. says, how many more moves do you want to see the Mariners make? 2 more good hitters, would you say is enough? Or else what do you want to see? I would like to see an equivalent move of Teoscar Hernandez somewhere else in this lineup, be it a left fielder, be it Carlos Correa type at shortstop. Not him necessarily, but just something that has a really impactful bat that they bring to the lineup. I think you're going to have to really bring the big boys to bear here against this Astro team. I don't think you can afford to just merely kind of muddle your way through and then hope the young guys develop and then hope that the Astros take a step backwards. I think that if you take that approach to it, you're going to find yourselves coming up just a little bit short. And certainly baseball is one, Daniel, to where you can continually add on to your team like no other sport. You can, as we saw with Luis Castillo being brought to the team last year and throughout the time, like you can always keep adding on. So it doesn't stop you if you don't get it in the off season, but you sure would like to do that work in the off season if you could. So I would like to see another hitter like Hernandez brought into the lineup. I would like to see probably, another guy maybe who can do a little more of the utility stuff, especially in the outfield. To a degree, though it depends on the hitter you get. Because if you get an everyday outfielder in the left field with that bat, then I got Haggerty, I got Kelnick. I'm okay between those guys and flipping them out between probably DH. But it'd be great if I guess, so here's my ideal. If I can get an equivalent bat of Teo Hernandez, and then I can find a DH who can go out there and hit 240 and hit me 25 home runs in a year. That would be good as far as 2 extra bats, if we could pull that. That might be a little bit greedy, but that wouldn't be bad if we could find something like that. Osama bin Diesel says, it turns out Swanson wasn't part of the trade to Toronto. He was just left in Toronto by service. It was weird, wasn't it? Because you had all those guys in the bullpen coming out, and Swanson was like the last guy of the bullpen being brought out in the playoff series. I don't know. He got in Service's doghouse. I don't know. Did he try to hook up with his daughter or something? Does Service have a daughter? Did Swanson call the daughter up? Is that what's happened here? Or DePoto? One of the two. Swanson saw DePoto's daughter walking through the clubhouse, and he's like, "Hey, girl. Hey." She's like, "Hey, Swanee." DePoto's watching from the corner like, "I'm going to send you to Canada, you son of a bitch." Osama Ben Diesel says Kirby came out of the pen to win game 2 against the Jays. He did. He did. But again, the key note on this Osama was the veteran that's been in the league for a lot of years. Kirby's a young kid, just still kind of finding that whole ritual thing, right? Robbie Ray's the guy that's been in the league for 10 plus years. So it's more reference to those guys that are really embedded in their mentality and being starters, and that like they've been that way for their whole life and their whole pro career. And Kirby's just rookie, right? Just finding his way. There's a little more of a track record of taking a rookie guy that has been a starting rotation guy in the minors, just coming up onto a team who then needs him as an arm in the bullpen, who eventually he'll then translate back into a starter. There is more of a baseline for that than taking the guy who's been the major leaguer in there for 9 years and then being like, okay, let's try you out of the bullpen tonight. You know, may not seem like a difference, but to me, it seems like there's a difference in just from mentality standpoint, preparation standpoint, comfortableness standpoint. Chad Lewis says, ideally we would land someone as capable as Correa, but I'd actually like the idea of Galbert Torres. Kid hits Oppo a lot. Really solid defense. He'd be okay with me. I like Gleyber Torres as well. Let's take a look at him there on the Gleyber Torres. He's got a fun name to say too. How can you not like it for that aspect of it? So with Gleyber, Yankee second baseman. I don't know what I don't think he's a free agent though, is he? So he's not a free agent. We'd have to trade for him. But last year, 257, 24 home runs. Good production, man. Last couple of years, 259, 257, 265. 9 home runs. They got him in. That's 3 home runs, 9. Kind of an outlier year for power for him last year, a little bit. But then you do go back to 2019, 38. Boy, he had 2 years there where power just dropped off. He was only 42 games, though, in 2020. So maybe that power starts to come back a little bit. That would be cool. But boy, yeah, you get 24 home runs out of the second base. I'll take that. But that would take them being willing to move him. I don't know. Is New York going to be willing to do that? I like him, though. I like that. Sign me up on that. And good defense. Fraternal Cloud, who backs up the big dumper in 2023, who plays second. I'm not as sure on second base at this point, Fraternal Cloud. That's probably the position they try to look to address. / you move Crawford there and then you address shortstop instead. So I don't think I can give you a good certain answer on second yet, because I think that's still a TBD kind of situation. Big dumper is going to get backed up by Murphy. And if not Murphy, you just added this Cooper Hummel kid is kind of, I think, the third option to it. If something goes down, Murphy has some issue, doesn't look as good, whatever may happen there. So that'd be your pecking order as far as the 3 catchers go in that order. So Tom Murphy is going to be your backup. Chad Lewis says their Mariners were reportedly interested in trading for him. Okay. I wonder what the cost would be on that. How about we'll give him Jesse Winker and what about a Jesse Winker Kelnick for Gleyber? Is that too much offloading crap for quality? What do you think, Chad? Is that too? Do I got to catch the Yankees on crack to get them to take that one? But I'm with Gleyber, man. You see it too, like in his dip there, especially the power numbers of 2020, where you can make sense that 2021 still probably getting back up to speed fully. Only still playing in 127 games at that point. Hit 259, but the power just wasn't quite there yet for him like it was in 2018, 2019, or at least in 2019, where he had a really crazy year. 278, hit freaking 38 bombs, 26 doubles. He's got okay on-base percentage. Pretty good on that, too. Seems like he's 331 career on-base percentage. So That's respectable. I mean, it's vastly superior, Chad, to what we're getting out of the position last year with Frazier. Well, we've gotten out of the position, it seems like, recently. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot more sense the more I think about it, actually. 4.1 WAR, I mean, geez, what'd you get out of Frazier? Adam Frazier. So 4.1 WAR versus what you got from Frazier last year, which was 1.1. So that's 4 times the WAR production of Frazier last year. Yeah, I can understand why the Mariners would be interested in that. Osama says, I can just imagine the look on Service's face if Swanson loses in a walk-off to Alvarez with the Jays. Yeah. He'll do a little pump. Got him. John Lee, I take a bag of Doritos for Winker, laughing out loud. I would too. He does nothing for me as a player. And then you hear some of the stories coming out about him being not necessarily an all-in team guy too as well. I think they gave him a 2-year extension last year at the start of the year too, which was weird. Like, why? We're going to have to offload him somewhere, though. The man can't play defense and you can't have outfielders that can't play defense in that stadium. It just makes no sense. They're going to cost you too many runs, especially left field. Left field's like a football field out there. Chrono says, did you hear about how the Titans offensive coordinator got pulled over for a DUI after the Packers game last night? I did. Yeah, I did. A little bit of celebrating there after the win, I guess, huh? A little extra. So, yeah, it's, I'm sure a lot of those coaches do a lot of drinking, a lot of other stuff to celebrate and get it through. It's a real emotional sport. It's a stressful sport. It probably causes those guys to do a lot of that stuff. I still do maintain if you're on a job that's got bright lights like that, if you get arrested and it becomes a news story blurb versus the regular guy who gets arrested, it's not good to drunk and drive anyway, but if your guy that's in public like that and it's going to affect your job like that, to do it, just take the Uber. Like, Uber's so cheap. I feel the same with the players. Like, why not just go get yourself the Uber and call it a day? No risk. Osama says, did Geno Smith reveal the secret to a bounce back season? Get a DUI and call the officer a small Richard? Well, it takes that attitude, man. You got to have that swag to you, Osama. So if you don't bring that swag to play, it's just like you can't be good. And it's hard can't just create that swag. You got to live that swag life. And Geno was living that swag life, Don't forget he was also going, I think, 100 miles an hour. So you also have to drive really fast too. That's a very big key. Chad Lewis says Winker in New York would be interesting. If Wink hits like he has his entire career, he would explode in that home run oriented ballpark. I agree. That's what I was thinking. That's why the first name came to me with him, Chad, right? Because you've got the short porch and right there in New York, especially. And then he could just get back to yanking it down the line there and pull another 30 home runs out, even if he's not able to get his average up. I think that park would be a lot better of a fit for him than what it's been for him so far there. He doesn't have that left-handed hit. He also is kind of like a gap left-handed driver. He doesn't necessarily yank it as much. And you've got really that, I always say that right field fence was really set up for Ken Griffey Jr.'s swing, and where they set the dimensions of that, where it goes really far and deep out, but it comes really short in as you get closer to the lines. And because Griffey could really pull that ball right down that line at times. And Winker's not as much of that real pull hitter. It more goes gap for him when he really gets on a baseball. And that's not a fit for our park here. On top of not a fit for he can't play defense for his life. The man has no wheels. Daniel W. says Osama bin Diesel is Garth's third burner account. It may be so. Oh, Lordy. Winker is a stinker. Got to get him replaced. We do. He's taking up a roster spot here that doesn't, he should be flopped out. Haggerty should be flopped for Winker, and then you need a starter. That's how you go. And it still is a successful trade because you came out of it with Eugenio and you feel fine with it about that. But Winker is not it. He's just not. Osama, did Gino drive a DeLorean? Is that the real key? 88 miles per hour, Osama. 88 miles per hour. And there's no truth to the rumors he tried to turn his jersey into 88 this offseason. But that'd at least give us a viable explanation, Osama, for how he's done what he's done this year. Because it's been so surprising that he's been able to pull this out like he has been able to pull this out. It's like, geez, really? Like this good? I'm still amazed by it. Anytime I think about how good a year Gino is having, how good he's looking as far as a player goes. It's like, whoa. Danny W says, did you say you were going to stream on the Seahawks channel on Sunday? I am. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it at 1 or at 5. I'm still kind of deliberating if I'm going to do an early afternoon or a later night, later evening gig. So, but I will 100% be streaming on Sunday this week. 100% for sure. Faux sure. So I will. I'll try to get a little bit of announcement on that. I think I'm leaning towards probably just doing a 1 o'clocker. But we'll play it by ear on that, Daniel. But I'll be on for sure. For sure. Well, we're a couple hours in here. We're going to keep this kind of tight and fast here today as we're, I'm going to be on the Mariner channel here. I want to hope to try to get more of these done, but I'm going to also try to hope to kind of do them as a little 1 or 2 hour off things versus what we kind of do them on what we do on the football side where we go a little bit longer. Osama says, did you hear Brock compare the UW quarterback to Geno and Locke? I didn't know. What did he say, Osama? What was the reference on how, I don't know. I mean, pretty quick and free and easy delivery, I guess. Pretty good mechanical delivery wise, throw with good on top of the mechanics being clean, throwing with good power. But I mean, he's a lefty. Even Geno and Drew Lock kind of have different ways of how they do what they do. They're similar in the free and easy deliveries, the fact the ball jumps out of both their hands when they throw. I mean, like those things are part of their game, but yeah, I'm kind of with Kronos on this, Osama. I don't know if I see the Penix comparison with Geno and Drew Lock. I don't. He's kind of a unique guy on his own. Sean says Penix's potential being a lefty is my issue. It's a valid issue. I'm a left-hander, so I'm it's one of those things where if you're a lefty, you're allowed to be prejudicial against lefties. And I'm just we throw. It looks weird coming out of our hand. You've heard receivers talk about the spin goes opposite and different, and that can provide some challenges in trying to catch the ball. You've got to kind of reverse your offense a bit at times and how you run what is strong side and what is weak side, because you're going to want the quarterback moving to the strong side on his throw, which now means he's going to his left rather than going to his right on a rollout. It changes a lot of different things like that. And you got to be a worthwhile talent for that to dictate that. You're mentioning Tua down there, big country, and that's a guy that goes in the top 10 in the first round. And that's what, necessitates then a team being willing to then change their offense around for that guy who is that lefty at that point because they think he's that talent who's worthwhile to go do that. I don't know if Penix is going to fit to that same worthwhile point. I have him right now in the more of the third, fourth round spot of things, in my opinion. Certainly think he could potentially be a Seahawk target. I really do like his throwing motion overall, even though it's hard with these lefties because it just looks weird. And I do like the power he throws with. I like his anticipation. I like the accuracy he throws with. I have questions with him about his processing on the field because I think the offense is kind of sometimes simplified in the way that they run it there for him. I don't know how pro-ready he's going to be necessarily. I do think as well, Geno Smith and Drew Lock are more talented players than Penix from a standpoint of, I think they're a little bit bigger. I think they're probably both just a little bit more mobile. And I think they both probably have a little more power in their arm, a little more RPMs that they can throw the football with. And that's not to say that Penix doesn't have potential, because he does. But, there is a reason too that Geno and Drew were second round picks and Penix is probably going to be a third or fourth rounder. Fraternal Cloud says UW football schedule has to be the easiest in Power 5 football. Yeah, maybe. I mean, hell, they knocked off the 6th ranked Oregon Ducks last week, so they've, it's definitely not SEC, right? So it's definitely not out there in any of those colleges out there. It's not even the Big Ten at this point, probably. But, that's Pac-10 football at this point. It's definitely not at its highest of heights as it stands. And I agree with the Big Country. I'm not sure on Tua still yet. Some people are like, see, now he's showing you he's worthwhile. He's really good. I'm still in that mode of I'm still not sold on him. I think he gets a lot of benefit of having Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and Mike Gesicki, and they got their tackle in place this year, so he's really being able to shine behind that. Chad Lewis says, my dream scenario would be Correa at shortstop, JP at second, trade for Matt Kepler, who is the best defensive right fielder in baseball, and play Teoscar in left field, where he is a bit better. Ooh, okay. Boy, that's very inventive on your part there. I like your leaning towards defense, Chad. I say you've got to think in this. You look at the stadium, you've got to think of it through a lens of defensively. It's one of the things we talk about why Winker's not a fit here is that you just can't have players that, you're only thinking about what they're doing with the bat. You've got to think about what they bring with their glove as well. And that may help Teoscar a little bit. I would say, Chad, moving Teoscar out there to left field where there's a little more room to cover than there is in right field, he is a guy from a rangy standpoint is not great from that angle of things. But you're putting the best right fielder out there on either side, and then you have Julio in center. Maybe you can have some, maybe you can afford to kind of, edge Julio over to the left to help out Teoscar at that point on the other end of it. You can kind of counterbalance it maybe a little bit that way. But I love your idea on there, Chad. Sign me up for that. Sign me up. Chrono says, I can confirm being a lefty is awkward trying to throw a football. Yeah, we just have I've long thought about this because I was a pitcher in baseball, and I could never develop any ability to throw with any power, especially from being a lefty. And I always just felt like when throwing lefty, like you've got, tens of thousands of years potentially in evolution with humanity, right? And a lot of that time with us throwing spears and throwing rocks and throwing stuff. And you got to figure that genetically we've worked our arms to be like really strong, but then you come along as a lefty and you've got this genetic anomaly of now you're going to be left-handed dominant, which is such a small percentage of the population, but you've had years of evolution where throwing spears, throwing rocks, using right arm, right, has strengthened this side theoretically, at least even in the smaller muscles, a little bit more than your left-handed side. And that's with control and with power, theoretically. I don't know. It's a working theory on my part, but we definitely are strange. We're a strange breed, us lefties. And the world is hard for us, Osama. It is. I die 6-7 years earlier as a lefty than you right-handers, on average. Because the world is built for right-handed people. So we're operating everything that's built for you guys, and it kills us at times. Everything's built for right-handers. So yeah, it's a tough world, man. It's an uphill world when you're a left-hander. Osama says, my dream is reborn Babe Ruth in left field alongside Prime Griffey and Prime Ichiro. What you said, dream. Hey, I'll go with that dream. Though Babe would have a hard time, Osama, out there covering those grounds in left field, man. That's a lot of space for the Babe to get out there and cover it. And you guys ever have you guys ever heard of Babe Ruth's diet, by the way? I don't know if I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, what he would eat. So here's what Babe Ruth would eat every day. Let me see here if I can find it. This was hilarious. According to the video and supporting documentation, the great Bambino would wake up in the morning and eat steak and potatoes for breakfast, along with a half a dozen eggs, and then wash it down with 4 cups of bourbon and ginger ale, a real breakfast of the champions. Later in the day, Ruth would consume 2 steaks for lunch, 2 steaks for dinner. Sometimes for a treat, he would throw lamb chops on top of his steaks, and would snack up on to a dozen hot dogs each and every day. As an after-dinner dessert, he'd have a chocolate ice cream and pickled eels. How did this man not die? Oh, they built them different back then, man. They built them different back then. Holy Lord. Cronus says, I feel Tua's shine is from the mastermind McDaniel's offensive scheme. That's another part that helps too. Yeah. The playmakers he's got out there and what he's got to work with. Yeah, I think that's a very well said. And I think he's just being put in a position to really get the most out of him right now and put him in that position to look good. It goes to my argument that also says it's really, as much as we get caught up about talking about these quarterbacks and it being all quarterback driven, and you got to get the quarterback. If you don't have the quarterback, you need the quarterback. I do start to more in recent years push back on this and say, no, you need the team. You put a team out there that's great, and you put a guy in there that can be functional as a quarterback, and he can really ascend. He can really soar. And I do think that's more of the case than ever now in football. Fraternal Cloud says the UW didn't have to play USC or Utah. That is true, man. That is true. I'm not going to deny your argument. I will not deny or debate your argument. It is right. They've definitely had an easier trek through their schedule this year than in recent years past. That's for sure, man. There's no doubt about it. Big Country says, give me Ricky Henderson, left field. Oh, Ricky would be fun in left. I could go with that too as a dream. I could go with that as a dream scenario. Ricky was great. Osama Ben Diesel, breaking news, Mariners are putting Kelnick on the Babe Ruth diet. There you go. Corona says Kelnick doesn't need to bulk up. He has too much muscle right now. He needs yoga in his life. Probably give him some of that patience and chill him out a little bit because he's just so wound. He's wound so tight. I saw him doing beer bongs there in the celebration. And even when he was doing the beer bong after they beat the Blue Jays or got to the playoffs, like he was even beer bonging aggressively. I don't know how you do that, but he made even that look like, Jesus, dude, just, you are drinking beer here. Just chill a little bit, man. It's not that serious. But yeah, he's also got to look, he also needs to figure out how to hit the breaking ball. If I was him all offseason, I'd go find a VR machine that just threw me breaking balls 24/7. Because that's what teams they're going after him with it. They're not going to give him fastballs. They know he can hit that. So it becomes, off speed curve, off speed slider, off speed curve. Kelnick's got to figure out his way around dealing with that pitch. And if he doesn't, he's never going to be a consistent major leaguer. I agree, Sean. He just needs a girlfriend, man. A girlfriend could go a long way for certain guys in that respect of things. And you're right, Sam. Great. That was the breakfast of champions. Could you imagine doing that for a week? Much less Babe probably did that for years. Years. And he was drinking, by the way, the whole time with all those meals. Like he was washing it down with Cokes. Every one of those hot dogs washed down with a whole Coke. Drinking pure Coca-Cola. Someone says maybe the girlfriend was the problem. Well, that could be it too. Why are you going between Tacoma and Seattle all the time? Why can't you just stay in Seattle? Because I'm not hitting. Leave me alone. Could be. Could very well be. You never know. All right, well, we crossed the 2-hour mark here, so I will wrap things on up. Any last questions you guys have in the comments in the chat here, and then I will be back on Sunday over on the other channel there on this Hawk's Nest channel. If you're not subscribed up here, please do get subscribed up. I would love it for you guys if you could. We will be back doing some more consistent stuff here on the Mariner channel, especially as we get into free agency and whatnot. And if they make any other moves, you can bet that I will get live here once again. Sam the Great says, and I thought Shaq had a crazy breakfast regime, 24 eggs. Yeah, that's I can't imagine eating. I've had times I've had like a really good workout. I'm like, I'm gonna go and get like a big breakfast now and eat a lot. Like I could manage maybe 4 or 5 at the most, and that's pushing it. 24 eggs. Osama Diesel says, what if Julio hits 299? Well, that will go below historical markers. Historical markers tell us it's not going to be that way, Osama. Historical marker says he's actually going to hit 305, 310. No shift next year. Guys on base. Pitchers a little more stressed next year. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big year coming from Julio next year. You guys count on it. going to be up there, and he'll be at least top 3 MVP. Top 7 MVP this year, rookie year. Top 3 next year. Count on it. Big Country Sean Lee, you guys have yourself a great evening. Osama bin Diesel, you have yourself a great night as well. Sam the Great, appreciate you guys. Well, Mariners got this stuff rolling in the right direction to start things out. We need to match the big dogs. We need to match the best of the best in this entire Major League Baseball league. It's not a matter of play up with the better in your divisions, and then we'll see what we can do when we get in the playoffs. You're not getting anywhere else. You're not getting by anybody else until you knock that big, bad bully off the block. And the way that we do that is by adding up the equivalent enough talent to be able to match them step for step when we get in a playoff series. When you lose 3 straight games in a row to them, you do not have the equivalent talent to match up with them in the series. I don't care how close you kept those particular games. You didn't quite have enough. You need to add more too. The Mariners have begun the process early on here, begun in a really nice way where you don't just wait till free agency and then start making your moves. Get out ahead of things. Try to get yourself already locked in. And I think it's an acknowledgement, the fact that they make this move, that there's more moves coming and there's some more big moves coming. I don't think Dipoto's just going to go into this offseason saying, oh, just the young guys will develop a little bit more and we'll be fine. I think he goes in this offseason saying we have to be aggressive. We have money to spend. We have a team in the position ready to roll. The Teoscar signing is as a move to go for it now this year. He's on 1 year remaining on his deal this season. That does indicate that they're going to try to go for it this year, and that should put a big, fat smile on every Seattle Mariner fan face out there. My name is Brandon Kane. This is The Crow's Nest. Thank you guys for watching. Please hit that like button on your way out the door. Daniel W., have yourself a good night. Big Country, Sean Lee, Sam the Great, Kronos, Osama bin Diesel, Big Country. Appreciate you guys, Fraternal Cloud. You guys have a great night. Please do not ever forget, especially, well, I shouldn't have to remind you, I have to make these great trades and signings and whatnot, but I'm going to remind you anyway right now. Do not ever forget, go Mariners. Let me say it right. Go Mariners. If I can say it correctly. Have a good